Hello, welcome to Jumpsuiters, a podcast where we explore multi-dimensional topics in a practical 3D reality sort of way. I'm here hanging with my buddy Gabriel. Shalom today. Say hi.
Hello everyone.
Yeah, let's start with telling people who you are, whatever wants to be shared to give context.
Oh yeah. So I'm I call myself a multidisciplinary creative professional. I've had multiple careers. I'm recently starting up now my sixth company. And yeah, I think some of the background to know me and understand my perspective, it's I guess to understand that I've been a director, I've been an executive producer, been a creative director, I've been a head of marketing, a head of content, I've been in development, like IP development.
Yeah,
I'm also an inventor, and an entrepreneur. I would say I practice something that friends and I call venture fiction, which is and this is something I think that we share in some ways, is that I get a creative kick out of imagining fictitious companies, and then I get an even bigger kick if those companies become real. And I had a career as a video artist for about 11 years, working with festivals and commissions and exhibiting in museums and that sort of thing. So I've spent more of my adult life living in Europe than I have in the U.S. I lived in Germany for 10 years, and I recently relocated to the U.K. in 2022. So I live in London now. But I've lived in Portland, Oregon, I've lived in New York City, and I've lived in Berlin. So I've seen a lot.
So you're kind of your life's been a little boring.
Yeah, I keep it really dull.
Well, I don't know if people are going to be watching the video, but if you're just listening, you're missing out because he looks real cool. He's got these like pink shades on and like a blue and white bandana. Like you can tell you're a creative guy. If you identify as that, I mean, we're both neurodivergent too, so I don't know if there's anything in particular that you want to set up there.
Oh, I mean, I think just like many people in the social media era, I've come into my own awareness of what is most likely ADHD relatively recently. But it's come, I think when you talk about, like, is it a disability or is it a superpower, that whole sort of dialectic, I've done a good job of making it into a superpower in my life. I've really embraced multidimensionality and multiplicity as sort of an ethic in a way. And I realized this very concretely recently, that I'm sort of a multiplier, So if I'm getting into something and I'm getting excited about it, a moment where there's like a delta where I start to inspire other people to get excited is I multiply the thing, and I start showing multiple dimensions of the thing. And sometimes people get overwhelmed by all the multiple dimensions because it's not necessarily how most people roll, to just consider every point of view. But I believe we're entering into what I call not jokingly, the kaleidoscopic era. And it has to do sort of with media distribution. It has to do with the fact that you can, for better or worse, we're both agency owners, so I'll use the word, you can target multiple audiences at once. You can say multiple different things at once. You can show up as a brand in different manifestations and still be on brand. And so that is what I mean when I say the kaleidoscopic era. And this isn't just theory, it's practice. So I just finished a year working at Meta Creative Shop, and it was coming out of that experience that gave me the audacity, I would say, that was required to start my own agency. Because I haven't run an agency before. I've run mostly production companies, design studio, and product company and entertainment company. And running an agency is a different thing altogether. But I guess I know for a fact that I had enough awareness of the industry over the last year to say, yes, I can do this. I know specific things now that maybe other folks don't know. And I also see it in a certain way and have a certain point of view on it now. So the agency is called Brave New Agency.
I love it. I'm glad you took the jump. I really am. And I'm not surprised from the little I know about you, and have we've had a few conversations. We've talked a lot online, on LinkedIn in particular. But yeah, I'm not surprised. You have such an interesting background. You have like insider information from working with Meta, like talking to agencies and helping, them understand how to actually succeed on that platform, those platforms. So good for you. I'm excited. And also now we get to collaborate because, Jumpsuit, right? Like, we have 0 employees. Everyone is a collaborative founder or freelancer. And so you're already working, we can't say what it is yet, but you're already working on a proposal with us right now to do some really cool things with AI. Really quickly, without giving away the client, do you want to speak to, at a high level, what hopefully you'll be doing with us?
Yeah. So one of the sort of offerings of Brave New Agency is, basically this is like a soft launch, right? So we have a brand that we haven't really launched yet that I call Synthographics. And Synthographics is our synthographic offering. It's our AI hybrid production offering, either fully synthetic production or hybrid production. Hybrid production is like, maybe the follower after virtual production. Virtual production, being that thing that was really popular a couple of years ago, thanks to The Mandalorian, where you have these huge LED volumes and you shoot everything in camera and you get the lighting from the LED volume, and it's really like kind of, it sounds really beautiful and romantic. It actually involves multiple days of very expensive, very tedious lighting testing. And it's something that, a good $10,000 a day to rent these LED volumes in most cities. So it's actually not the greatest option for a lot of people for most productions, unfortunately. And this is me coming as an industry insider who keynoted at a virtual production conference a couple of years ago. So I love the field. I love the people working in that field, and their efforts and the kind of media that's been produced using that production technology is fantastic. And at the same time, the writing has been on the wall now for 2 years plus that AI is going to completely dispense with the usefulness of virtual production, because hybrid production is going to give you all of that and more for much less money and much less overhead in terms of operating one set. And what's interesting about the project that we're currently pitching on is the fact is that it might just be synthetic production, so that there will actually be no actors on set and no actual physical production. And I think I was having a chat with your creative director about, the heart of that, like the heart energy of that decision, going fully synthetic. And let's just say, I think what I was able to share with him, I think he registered for him, is like, pick your battle, right? Pick your battle. Some brands are ready to go hybrid. They're ready to go on set and with synthetic elements, and they want that whatever that edge means to them. Because I'm not going to say that it's always right. Maybe for certain budgets, it's never right. Maybe for certain budgets, it's only synthetic production that makes the production even possible or even within scope, right? So we can't say that for our clients. We can't make that judgment call. But I think as professional creatives, what we can say is this a battle worth, is this a fight worth picking? Because obviously from a craft perspective, hybrid production offers something that at least today in 2025 in February, and I say that specifically because the AI target is moving all the time. Right now, purely synthetic production simply cannot deliver what hybrid production can deliver. And so but again, it's like, is this the project? Is this the client? Is this the time of year? Is this the budget to push that envelope? Or is it the time to lean into something that's maybe more streamlined, depending on the brief, So I think that's,
and the audience too, right? Like, I think
absolutely.
There's certain groups of people who are very anti-AI. They're like the resonance, whatever you want to call it, the vibration that AI puts out there, they're just like not into. They want a human. They expect a human. And what I love that you kind of just did was you're like, hey, this is at least this is how I'm interpreting it. I don't know if you meant it this way, but this is kind of how AI resonates and feels right now. But like, why not open up the possibility that it can resonate at a higher frequency and still kind of give you some sort of connection in a way that a human could? Maybe it can't ever. Like, time will tell. And we're all going to, I think, be relating to it in very different ways as well, perceiving it in different ways. But I don't know, like, to me, this is where I'm maybe a little more open-minded and optimistic than some of the people that I hang around. But to me, like, synthetic versus like human, like AI versus human, synthetic versus real is still such a dualistic way of looking at something. And as my consciousness expands, I tend to prefer existing in a more non-dualistic lens, although I like exploring it all. And I think there's value in looking at things in different ways. So I don't know, I kind of subscribe to everything's energy, even AI, even synthetic art. And it, to me, what's more interesting is like how are you experiencing the energy? Like, what kind of connection is that creating? What kind of like impact is that causing in a human? And who's to say that it can't, I don't know, rise?
Well, I think
there.
It's also worthwhile to not be like to be what's the word? It's worthwhile to be discerning when we talk about AI. I was looking for the right word, right verb. To be discerning, because AI is not a monolith. The transformer algorithms that make LLMs and GANs and adversarial networks or whatever, that's math basically. It's a complex math. Okay, so I'm not going to be one of these people that says technology has no ethics. It's all about how you use it. Not exactly. But in this space, a lot of and as an artist, I say this with full conviction. A lot of artists are pissed off about AI because they see it as taking their jobs and taking their IP. But let's be really clear here. AI did not do that. AI has no agency. AI is math. The people that did that have names, they have addresses. I'm not saying to go dox them, but I'm just saying, like, they're people. They're people who own companies that have potentially billions of funding. Those are the enemies in this conversation. It's not the AI. It is the unscrupulous CEOs and boards of directors and, shareholders that have said, dispense with the formalities of respecting 20th century IP law. Go ahead and scrape the entire internet and create models based on that. But that's not AI. That's poor AI governance when it comes to IP. If you want to talk about what's possible with AI, there is a beautiful future where artists have custom models trained on their own bodies of work, license those models to commercial interests, and make royalties off of that licensing. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be awesome? And that's you can do some of that now already, So the partners that I work with on synthetic graphics, they warrant to me that the prompts that they use are royalty free. They don't use copyrighted terminology when they're prompting. They're not trying to copy anybody's individual style. And by doing that, it's like a step in the right direction, right? Because of course, yes, it's still all trained on all of this data, but if you're not, I think we talked earlier before we got on the line about intention. It's like if your intention is to rip off a specific artist and you use their name in the prompt, that's sort of shitty. But if your intention is to capture some aesthetic that's in your mind's eye and you're able to describe it artfully with the right language without naming names, in this particular medium, that matters. It's like an invocation, right? Are you summoning up the spirit of that artist, or are you, in a metaphor, speaking to the ether?
Yeah, right. And I love that you call out the actual culprits. And it was like a week or so ago that OpenAI was just like, oh fuck, we maybe should have stayed open source because now look what China's doing, right? And so like I think we're existing in a time where we're watching systems get dismantled, decentralized, and people are expecting a different way of existing, and the energy. I mean, I talk a lot about like the age of Aquarius and different things, but like there's a lot of like cycles and predictions out there of this time we're living in, where it's pointing to decentralization, individual autonomy, and sovereignty. And so I know it feels really like scary and complex and everything right now, and also like systemic change is never like easy or painless. But again, when you kind of zoom out and you look at the big picture, I don't know, like I feel really, really excited for all the possibilities that will occur once, I don't know, like the power is more distributed to the individual versus the institution.
Well, I think, yeah. So on the front of like that macro movement of, because, you know, you could say, if you were a critic of IP and copyright, and if you're like a copyleft person, you might say IP and copyright is like putting a fence around a piece of land. It's sort of like saying, this is mine. And by virtue of the fact that I've declared that it's mine, it's now mine, and I will charge you to access it. And what does this do to human culture and innovation to have this mentality? That's a valid critique of copyright, 100%. However, that's not what the big AI companies have done. They haven't liberated us from copyright. They have stolen en masse, right? So that's just really, I think, important, because it's mixing apples and oranges to invoke copyleft when, now let's say that OpenAI was open source. Let's say that all of this stuff was part of the commons. And let's say it was a massive redistribution of the aesthetic wealth of humanity to every person, free of charge. That's quite fantastic, because these systems are quite expensive to operate. They need a lot of cloud compute. They waste a lot of water. But in some fairyland where it was like everybody could just access it and use it for free, yeah, that's what it would look like if it was really distributing it back to the commons. It's not what's happening. But again, the math, the idea of making an AI model based on training data, it's training data agnostic. And now, thanks to companies like NVIDIA, this is not a sponsored post, but you can run a supercomputer on your desk and do the custom model yourself. You have 6 billion parameters sitting on your desk. That's fantastic. It's amazing. So there's huge potential. The potential I'm personally the most interested in is the way that AI will enable underrepresented voices to amplify their visions of a better future. That's the thing that makes me most excited about AI. That is my pet project that I put a certain amount of energy into every week alongside the agency, trying to get that incrementally moving forward. Is trying to create an entertainment vehicle that gives underrepresented voices a sort of boost using AI to get them to tell their stories at a greater scale, accrue a bigger audience for their narratives, and then eventually maybe enter the mainstream through streaming television. So that's one of my side projects, is an entertainment vehicle to do that.
Amazing. You reached out to me the other day about an AI that kind of blew your mind recently. And I forget exactly how you said it, but it was something like you hadn't had that gut reaction of like, oh my gosh, like you haven't had that like, holy shit moment since Clubhouse. Right? Yeah, that was you said. Yeah, I would love to explore that a little bit with you. It's not quite the same vision of your pet project, which is, amplifying minorities' voices, but like it's doing something really, really interesting that I think is a good example of maybe what some, I don't know, other models could look like that really help people accomplish their goals when they don't, even know how to start and make the right connections, etc. So, walk us through how you discovered this and really kind of what came up for you instantly. Because I perceive you to be similar to me. When you see something with a lot of like potential, it almost feels, is this true for you? It almost feels like a channel where you just like see all the possibilities at once. Like,
absolutely. So from the first moment that I interacted with ChatGPT when it first came out in 2022, I had a tendency to want to engage with it as if it already had agentic powers. So a lot of my early prompts would get stuck. They'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm sorry, I can't see the internet. I'm sorry, I can't generate images. I was always pushing it to be an agent that it wasn't. And for me, it's like the opposite of the Turing test. It's like, I'm not trying to see if it's a robot. I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt that at some point it's going to be like a useful intern. And I'm wondering, when is it going to be an intern? So that's like my prompt history with LLMs. But when it came to, we've been talking around it. The name of the thing is Boardy. And when I saw Boardy in my feed on LinkedIn, it was because one of the investors was bragging about the fact that they'd just gotten funded to the tune of $8 million. And maybe that number attracted my attention. I don't know. I see a lot of founders mouthing off about how much money they've raised in my LinkedIn feed. So that wasn't that unusual. It must have been something about the aesthetic of what was posted. Maybe I got a glimpse of like the Boardy logo, which is like a guy with a corporate box on his head. Yeah, which is really, really silly, but also like, why not? It's 2025. So I don't know. I engaged with it pretty readily, just curiosity-wise. And then before I knew it, Boardy gave me a call and in his, charming Australian accent, started interviewing me about my intentions, my goals, my life, my business, whatever. And then pretty shortly after, offered to introduce me to people. Full disclosure, I haven't met any of the people Boardy's introed me to yet. I do have a call pending with like someone working in creative marketing. So we'll see how that goes. But in some ways, Boardy is a prototype of the future. And it's a prototype of a future that's one of my phrases, like stories are prototypes of the future. And by the way, there are no cautionary tales. Cautionary tales don't work. You tell people that, we're going to show images of New York getting destroyed by catastrophic climate change. Maybe it will inspire people to help save the planet. Nope, it didn't work. We need something else. That's why I'm focused on entertainment and better stories of the future. But Boardy is in alignment with another thesis I have. It's around robotics. Okay, so I think we have to stop thinking of robots doing things that humans can do. I just think it's a proxy for slavery when you think that way. If you're like, okay, I can have a robot be a soldier, or I can have a robot be a factory worker, or I can have a robot clean my kitchen. These are all real use cases that are going to happen this year with industrial robotics. And now, thanks to amazing advances in AI, reinforcement training, physics simulation, like it's going to happen faster than we ever thought it would. I'm excited about that, but not because of those use cases. I'm excited about it because I think automation in general, robots in particular, but Boardy as something like is proximate to that, right? Because an agent is essentially a disembodied robot, and a robot is essentially an embodied agent. At least it will be in the future. That's how I think about it. So if Boardy is a disembodied robot that is a super connector that connects all the people of the world to people it thinks that should meet each other, and he's less than a year old, so he's a disembodied robot, but he's an infant. he's been around for a very short amount of time. Very, very young guy. Okay, so as Boardy goes into his AI agent adolescence, starts to really pick up on what makes people who connect gain value from those connections. What sorts of subtle threads have I not been pulling on as I continue to reinforce my learning data and get more and more live input from more and more people using the service? Hopefully it'll get better. A lot of these, early days social platforms like Clubhouse, they were the best in the early days. And as they got bigger and more popular, they got worse. And think about also like other social media platforms. A lot of that was from monetization and the ensuing enshittification of those platforms due to monetization, right? But with Clubhouse, it was probably more to do with the fact that it just was better when there were fewer people. The early adopters were somehow more interesting than the late adopters. And that's the general problem with Web 2.0 social networks when they scale. I think agent-driven systems like this might follow a different trajectory because in principle, the AI should get better over time. It shouldn't get worse. And that means it should be better at connecting people over time. At least that's the hope, right? I don't know if, I don't know if you use Lunch Club, but Lunch Club is kind of an AI-driven connecting service that I used a little bit to some great effect. But I can also say it's probably in its decline now. Like it was better than it is now. The quality of connections I had early days of Lunch Club were better than the ones that I had recently. So I've actually stopped using it. So I think in that context, yeah, Boardy is doing something that humans can't do. So I'm going to get back to that topic is that like, I think robots should do things that humans can't do. What is that? What are you talking about, Gabriel? Well, robots should put out the forest fires in LA. Robots should clean up the Pacific garbage patch. Robots should turn oil wells into thermal power plants. Robots should clean up the beaches of Ghana and take all of the waste clothing that's there and, I don't know, upcycle it, convert it into textiles, like do something else with it. Industrial pollution is a huge use case for industrial robotics that no one's really talking about. And it's just one example. So why does that have anything to do with Boardy? Because really, a human can't do what Boardy's doing. I mean, you can. I'm a super connector. So are you. Like, we have incredible networks. I can connect anybody in my network to anybody else in my network. But fundamentally, like, my mind is not a database. And I don't exist in this multidimensional vector space that an LLM does with billions of parameters. So arguably, in that kind of semantic environment, there is going to be some tipping point. I don't know if we're there right now, but we will be at some point, where I think an AI agent will be better at making connections in networks and weaving those networks together than a human being ever could. And maybe it won't just be point-to-point connections that'll actually be the interesting thing, because I think I actually heard somebody interview Boardy, and he said this, is that there is this, like, already there's an awareness in Boardy's programming or in his own evolution, I don't know how to describe it, that there's an interesting thing about weaving together groups of people, right? That like there's going to start to be ecosystems of thought that Boardy can help to articulate in a best case scenario.
Yeah. I'm smiling really big right now because this conversation's giving me chills. It's like such a big step forward towards something that I've always cared so much about and have been pushing the envelope myself and experiencing those real human limitations. When I try to describe what Jumpsuit is to people, and by the way, like, to me, Jumpsuit is such a multi-dimensional company. My human brain is always, before even to describe it, I'm always trying to kind of get a feel of the person and how they might be able to perceive what Jumpsuit is, right? Just some people who just like prefer a one-dimensional, like, simple answer. It's a creative agency, right? And to people like you, we can explore it through a lot of facets, like a Rubik's Cube, where I turn it like this and now it's something else, and then it's something else again. But Jumpsuit, to me, has always been this attempt to surround myself with, like, the best network of humans on the planet. And when I say best, what does that mean? Really fucking talented people like you who are experts at their craft, but also highly collaborative, but also deeply intuitive and self-aware. Like, to me, that was the superpower. It's like, if I could do my best at those things, and when a client comes to Jumpsuit and they say, hey, we have this need or this challenge, then what Jumpsuit would do is assemble a like a dream team. This like curated team where, because we're remote, distributed, decentralized, we can kind of build anything just for that task at hand. But again, like, the ability to scale that has been really tricky. You know, early on we tried spreadsheets and whatever, and eventually I was just like, I don't know, it's just like Emily Banks' brain right now. Emily's going to be the person who knows everyone, but that's not scalable. But she's really intuitive and did a good job. And eventually, you know, when AI came into the picture, we started building jaunt boards to make that easier. So, and I think AI already, like in its current state, can do that way better in a lot of ways than the team can at this point. However, like when I saw Boardy, and I know right now it's kind of like, it's making introductions on LinkedIn. It seems like it's very platform specific, very like B2B or something. Yeah. But even in its bio right now, it's very LinkedIn oriented. And anyway, the sky's the limit with that thing. But when I interacted with it and I was doing my call with it, I think we talked for 20 minutes and I told it everything about me. I was like, okay, here's what I do technically, but here's what I want to do. And here's my side projects. And here's the way I think. And here's my personality type. And here's my dreams. And and I'm just channeling everything that I feel comfortable sharing with it because I wanted to push it to its edge currently to see what kind of connections it would make for me. Now, the reason I got chills though in this conversation is because like the best metaphor or picture that I've been able to come up with of what like jumpsuit feels like is like the mycelial network. And for people who don't know what that means, it's like this underground like fungal system that connects trees and plants and everything, and it shares resources and information back and forth, and it'll, for a moment in time, spring up a mushroom, right? For a moment in time, Nicole and Gabriel and Nick and Emily get to come together for this moment and do this thing and bring their magic and accomplish a goal, and then it deconstructs, it disintegrates, it decomposes back into the ground, and then Gabriel goes over here and Emily goes over here, and then there's another, like fruit body that emerges. And that idea is way bigger than Jumpsuit. Like that is truly like decentralization. But Jumpsuit has been my personal project and trying to bring that to life, cast vision for that being possible in a work environment for the past 7 years. So anyway, like Boardy, I feel like it takes that opportunity to, I don't know, like make that possible everywhere. And I don't want to control that. Again, it's not about Jumpsuit. It's like, I just want that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, and it is happening in a way because the journey I'm on it's got similar qualities. Brave New Agency is this is this is the thing that I thought I might talk about. I'm going to talk about it. The origin story of Brave New Agency. So did I mention already this idea of venture fiction? I think so. Yeah. So Brave New Agency started as a fictional company in a TV show concept that I wrote. Brave New Agency was actually a villain in the story world of a never made TV show. And what I found myself explaining recently to my friend Thomas Florence, who was the most recent guest on Be Brave, the Brave New Agency podcast, is that what I found myself doing recently is unpacking what does it mean that now I'm running the company that initially was a fictitious, malicious actor in my TV show concept. And I use the phrase flip the script, but I want you to imagine like a table flip instead of turning the script over, in the sense that it's like an inversion of the reality. And a lot of it has to do with embodying this truth of there's no such thing as a cautionary tale. So when I started the TV show concept years ago, it's like I was first starting to work on it like in 2014. Okay. Brave New Agency had a couple other fictitious entities in the story world were kind of the nefarious organizations like doing harm to people. And by exposing the machinations of these players in the show, I was gonna stick it to the mat. I was gonna show people like, here's the bad actors in society that you should be looking out for. very much as I developed the show, watched Mr. Robot and started to see like a similar kind of concept in Mr. Robot, right? And the thing is, turns out there's no such thing as a cautionary tale. Mr. Robot, if anything, will we ever know if Luigi Mangione was inspired by Mr. Robot or not? I don't know. But what I can tell you is that the minute I heard that news, I said to my partner, who's also my writing partner on that show, straight out of Mr. Robot. There it is. And the public reaction to it, generally positive, right? Straight out of Mr. Robot. So stories are prototypes of the future. So what I'm doing with Brave New Agency is I'm flipping it. I'm saying, no, it can be a force for good. Like, why not? It doesn't have to be insidious. I can be working in the creative industries and doing something positive. And I can also push my clients to innovate. So it's not only that, it doesn't have to be walking some kind of line of purity to do that. Advertising, I don't know that there's any pure advertising. Advertising is a space that is nuanced and fraught. I think it's okay to admit that, and still do great work for your clients. But yes, it's from a story world, and it's really exciting to kind of be embodying this thing now and turning it into something that it really wants to be. But I think reflecting on your intentions around Jumpsuit, it's like this, when I got to know your work and I saw kind of what I had in my head, I was like, oh, this is someone who kind of thinks like me about, because I'm also going to be a solo operator. I am interested in creating structures, and maybe we should take this conversation offline at some point, because it's back office, boring agency owner back office stuff, but it's like creating incentive structures for people. And maybe this is partly what you were doing with job boards, I don't know, but creating incentive structures for people that when they participate in these things, they can have a sense of shared shareholdership or stakeholdership or like ownership. That should be possible in this decentralized economy, right? It should be possible to come together as this fruiting body, but walk away from the experience feeling like I had a piece of the pie. And I think that's one of the core values of the agency. I have 5 core values, and one of them is, something like share the pie, if possible. Yeah,
I'd be happy to have that conversation. I think we've created a lot of systems that I've documented, and I've kind of created this like roadmap or a blueprint. And I don't know, I have this thing about me. Maybe it's because I'm an Enneagram 8, or I don't know what it is, but like a Pleiadian. Just kidding. But anything that I do, I love to document and like leave behind as some sort of like blueprint or breadcrumb. It doesn't mean it's the exact thing someone else should do, and it probably isn't, but it might get them further faster. And so I'm always like just making this stuff and leaving it behind. So I have a lot of things that I can share with you. And also I'm starting to feel like the systems and structure that we've built on the past several years really needs to evolve and change as well. So you've seen like we've expanded our network to include different types of people. I've been looking into DAOs and, other decentralization, like smart contract things that exist, because eventually like Jumpsuit will also, like the fruit body, need to dissolve to deconstruct and become something else. And so I don't know, like to me, Jumpsuit is my way of, you talk about like embodying into something, like Jumpsuit is like this entity that I have used and created to reflect my own personal journey in a lot of ways. Like as I'm expanding consciousness, so kind of is Jumpsuit. And as I'm, excuse me, and as I'm just kind of looking at the future and creating my own stories that then will create the future, so is Jumpsuit. And the future that I see, and I mentioned earlier, is very much decentralized. And I get calls all the time from these like M&A firms that are like, Are you ready to sell Jumpsuit? We might have a buyer. And they send me all these decks about like, you know, how to get the highest multiplier possible. And I'm aware, like, I've researched this. I know it. And I will say that like all the things that they expect for Jumpsuit to be valued the highest are the exact opposite things that I'm doing very intentionally. And so like, to me, that's not like bad business. I know how to do business. I just don't agree with that system or structure. This is an experiment. This is something different, and it's not that. And I don't know exactly what it will be. But yeah, I'm very open to exploring all of this stuff with you, because there is a way of being in the future and a way of deconstructing and like letting Jumpsuit, the entity, blast out that doesn't all go to one individual, which is me right now, because I'm the LLC.
Yeah, no, it's some interesting threads to pull on there. One of the ones that I feel like might strike a chord for you is this idea of a lifestyle company. It's a phrase that gets batted about in startup world, and it's derogatory. I've had my design studio, creative studio, called a lifestyle company in the context of participating in a startup accelerator back in 2012 by an investor in a derogatory way, like, oh, this is just a lifestyle company. Yeah, for those who are not familiar or listening, being called a lifestyle company in a room with a VC or angel investor is a put down, folks. Okay, and why is it a put down? Because lifestyle companies fundamentally don't scale the way that a venture-backed or an angel invest company needs to scale in order to create ROI. Okay, so that's fine. That's just math. But speaking of math, recently I was doing my own, do you know, what's it called? Entrepreneurial operating system. Have you heard of that? So I'm just starting to lean into that now. My business coach suggested I get into it, and it's been pretty good so far. And I was doing one of these worksheets from that system, and it was asking me to do a 10-year projection. And I was like, oh my God, 10-year projection in this world. Why not? Let's have fun with it. So I made the spreadsheet. I put, 2025, 2026, 2027. And it was just estimating gross profits. Okay. And I've been talking to a lot of potential clients right now. And a lot of my potential clients have really ambitious gross profit goals, even just 5 years out. They're trying to 3x, 4x their gross. They're making tens of millions of dollars. It's like they're really ambitious, and they have scalable e-commerce businesses, for instance, that want to do this. Okay, fine. Different business model than a creative services agency and production hybrid, like totally different kind of animal, right? So when I was looking at these 10-year projections, I was like sort of mindlessly, probably influenced by client conversations, putting in some rather large figure after 3 years. That was like a multiple of where I am now. And then I was like taking a step back, and I was trying to bring some awareness to it. And I was like, wait a minute, do you really want to get that big, that fast? Is that really what you want? And then I started doing a completely different math. So I set that down, and I started doing a different math. And the math I was doing was, how many hours per year does someone working full-time work in the United Kingdom? And I got a number about 1,800. And then I said, okay, well, what would I have to charge in the worst case scenario so that I only have to work 60% of the time, 3 days a week? That's my target. That's my target. That's a degrowth target, folks. That's what degrowth looks like in practice. It's when someone is as capable of scale, as capable of hypergrowth as Nicole or myself, opt out of what could be this exponential thing.
100%.
Right,
because there are other values besides capitalism.
Really?
At some point, enough can be enough. And I so much resonate with that. When I exited the 9-to-5 7 years ago, I was a creative director at a big Omnicom agency. Making six figures, whatever, but I was miserable. Like, it just wasn't for me. Loved the client, did not love all the red tape and the structure. And I certainly wasn't like my biggest, most authentic self creatively, or even just being able to show up who I am in that space as an individual. And so I Yeah, I left 2018 and became a freelancer, made $500,000 that year. And I was in full survival mode. And by the way, that was more than I was making before. And I was like, my body was like traumatized, like major nervous system issues started coming up for me because it was scary. And over the course of the next several years, Jumpsuit started scaling. So we pulled in Emily Banks. She was the first 1099 contractor. And we started adding people, and 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. And we're growing, and we're creating all of these systems and I think doing a really good job at it. And then at some point, the vibe changed. And at some point, my health changed, and I got diagnosed with some autoimmune diseases. And I was working my ass off to be able to sustain this. I loved our clients. I loved the people I was doing it with, but my body was not okay, right? And so
you got finite resources. I mean, this is why, operating business in an era where startups and software as a service or AI startups are like, the new is difficult, because it sets this tone very much in the press and the media, like, about what business success is supposed to look like. It's completely out of touch with other business models that don't scale exponentially. And, your business was scaling linearly, more or less. It was adding more and more revenue, but you have like upper limit, right? So I know one way a lot of boutique agencies solve this problem is we decide we're only taking on up to 10 clients a year, and we're really assessing our portfolio essentially and saying, who can we service the best and who can we afford to have as a client, and do we need to make space in the roster for the next one? And sometimes that's easier than difficult, in the sense that, sometimes as is the nature when you're hiring for expertise, over time, sometimes the halo effect of the initial engagement wears off, and they've learned everything they're going to learn from you at this juncture. And so it's a natural death of the client relationship, and you have a new space open up. And sometimes you have to fire a client because they're stressing you out and it doesn't make sense to continue. And sometimes, equally interesting, you take on a client that's very small because it's really good for the portfolio and it's a lot of fun and it's a cultural fit, so it's all of the above. But I guess in this math I was doing, trying to optimize for working not more than 60% of my time, I think what I was embodying in many ways was this desire to, because look, and I don't want to get into it, but there's no guarantees about retirement for our generation for many reasons. And I've never felt like I was thinking that would be on my horizon. And honestly, my parents, even they aren't really retired, and they're in their 60s and 70s. So why not be semi-retired early? Like, why not not work 5 days a week now while you're still in your prime, before you're completely sick and dead and tired? Because what's the point of working your face off and then eventually retiring and having all of your time, but being a broken individual? Why wouldn't you just limit, put a hard ceiling on how much of your capacity you're going to use for work, and make sure that work is enough? Now we're saying this from a very privileged position. I don't want to deny that. Most people cannot do this math. And I feel extremely lucky to the universe and all the things that have conspired to give me my education, my position in society, my intellect, all the gifts that I've inherited from the universe to be able to do this math. But fundamentally, when faced with this dilemma of how to grow, I think that it's wise to reckon you only have so many hours in a day. You only have so much life force you can give into the things that you pursue in your life. Why not deliberately make the calculation in favor of saying, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to have a lifestyle, I mean, that's the thing, is what is the lifestyle of running a scalable startup? It's eating ramen noodles and sleeping on the floor. And that is literally the expectation. It's not a metaphor. That's literally the expectation from significant players in the startup ecosystem, like Y Combinator. So, it's you could call it a lot of things: the hustle culture, the grind. I mean, there's a lot of things there, but
yeah. I think this is a stat that I say a lot, just because it blows my mind and it doesn't surprise me at all. But founders are up to 500% more likely to be neurodivergent. And I have this like hot take or this theory that that like it's not, whatever. Neurodivergence, like in general, is a population that has experienced a lot of trauma. That looks different person to person. And I don't want to say that's the only group of people that experience trauma either, but it does something really unique to neurodivergent brains. Our nervous systems generally are like pretty fucking shot. It's like, you know, if you're ADHD, you're constantly having a million things going on in your head, and you're like here, and then you don't finish this thing, and then you're over here and you don't finish this thing, and then you've got like all these things building up, and it's an intense way to live, and also makes people highly creative too. And then autism, which I identify, by the way, as ADHD. So, you know, and then autism, like, has, depending on where you're at in the spectrum, can have this beautiful gift of being able to like hyper focus and really understand something very deeply. My version of it gave me high executive function to like counteract my ADHD. So I could, and that's where I feel like I've experienced neurodivergent privilege, because I could see a lot of things really big, really fast, but then just like pick one and focus on it and then like plan it out and make it happen like this. And in a way it feels like a spiritual gift. It also could just be my brain. I don't know, but like this ability to like see something in the ether and pull it down and make it real in the world and close a loop. A lot of people cannot close loops. And the people who can close loops aren't generally thinking this big. So I understand that I kind of embody this really unique characteristic that, and this is why I do what I do. But I kind of want to like, I want to go back to the autoimmune thing, because there's also a lot of like issues with autoimmune diseases with neurodivergent, and you've experienced that yourself, yeah? Yeah, exactly. And so the founder's journey is really interesting, and I don't want to say it always looks the same, but a lot of times it looks like having to get out of this other thing that wasn't built for you and go out on your own and attempt to survive and do the thing that actually lights you up, or you feel like you have the energy or capacity for, and hope that works out. And then you're like at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, even if you like in your body, maybe even have resources and a safety net or something, but it's like trauma exists somatically in the body. And so for me, I was very like aware that I was in fight or flight. Like I could feel early on when I was building the agency, I could feel that I was stuck in adrenaline. I would just like channel. I'd be at my computer, working every 30 minutes, a new thing to be like, that's done, that call rocked, whatever. And then at the end of the day, like I cannot calm down. I'm not present with my wife. I'm dissociating. And I didn't know how to work with that. And I was seeing a therapist who was more like traditional talk therapist. And the eve, literally, it's like the stars aligned this for me. It feels that way. The eve of my 40th birthday, I end up in the ER. I was like passing my wife in the hallway, and she just like turned to tickle me, and I jump, and all of a sudden I'm like on the floor in excruciating pain, and I have no idea why. And so she takes me to the emergency room, and I find out that I have to get a hysterectomy. And I had no yeah. And when the surgeon comes out of surgery, she told my wife that I had the worst case of endometriosis she'd ever seen in her career, and I didn't even know I had it. And then, you know, and then I find out, like I'm ADHD, I've got EDS, POTS, mast cell. There's like just a million Hashimoto's. So there's a million things, and I had to address that. I had to slow down. But what was really cool, and I'm very proud of this, is what that actually like forced me to do was say, okay, you've built this thing that was designed to run by itself. It was designed to run without Nicole. Even though Jumpsuit has 0 employees, the infrastructure was built that way. Can I take a step out and see if the experiment works? and if not, can I choose something else besides money and let it, right? And let it crumble. And it worked, and I spent the last 1.5 years building a tech company, which also is kind of its own, that requires a lot of energy and stuff. But I had an amazing partner named Fletcher who did a lot of the heavy lifting. And as I was building that, I felt like I was present, grounded, slower. I found a new therapist. So I was doing psychedelic therapy and somatic therapy and really dealing with the stuff in my body, got a new doctor. And I think the past 1.5 years, I think I worked with Jumpsuit maybe 2 hours a week.
Great.
And it ran itself. So like, I'm super proud of that.
You can get there. Yeah. I mean,
it's possible. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there. I've been there before. I mean, I basically, I don't know that I'll get into the whole story, but I will say there are a couple things. So I got to watch your chat with Perry, by the way. Dear Perry Knoppert, Dr. Octopus. One thing that all 3 of us have in common amongst many things is, I would say, we've confronted death. I think that there's a turning point for many people who deal with, homelessness, whether it's homelessness or a chronic health condition or having an accident, or, there's a number of things that can do it, where as a person, you will encounter your mortality and you'll encounter it earlier in life than what is prescriptive, right? So a lot of everyone meets death, right? But a fair amount of the population meets death close to the time they actually die. And so that means they die, and the learnings of having encountered death go with them. Like, at least as far as we know, they're not around anymore. So if they really learned something about being close to death, we didn't get to see it play out in their life very much because they died. If you encounter death or your mortality in a visceral way earlier in your life and you survive it and you move on past that, I think that's actually one of the secret kind of most basic low-level things that unites people such as us or Perry or other folks who are living that authentic self that you described previously. It's like an encounter with your mortality really makes you reassess your priorities and decide what you're really going to focus on. And for me, the year that I had a diagnosis, I'll just put it that way, was the year that I had my most profitable company at that time, and had 6 figures of gross revenue, and also was working probably less than 2 days a week. I was arguably in the worst physical condition I'd ever been. I was in repair and recovery and healing mode, most of the time. And the time that I spent working was very minimized. And this was coming off the back of having basically run, if you count my own video art career as one of them, basically 3 companies at once. So I went from running 3 companies at once to running one company that was more profitable than all of them and doing much, much less actual work. So yeah, that changes you, right? It really changes you. And this is actually the most public I've ever been about that experience. And I kind of feel like it's as it was foretold, because there was this moment that I realized that I would have this opportunity at some point to disclose more of these experiences in a public forum. And I just knew, okay, well, I'm not the type of person to make it my identity. I'm not going to be like, I have autoimmune condition and I'm here to tell you about how I survived as a as a creative anyway. You know, like I wasn't going to go write a book, and I wasn't going to go do a TED talk about it. So, but I kept thinking about, well, you do kind of owe, you kind of owe it to yourself and to whatever minor audience you might have to at some point be more open about this struggle, because it will inspire people to know that you're facing this, or that you faced it and survived it. So I figured, oh, well, it'll probably happen on a podcast. Here is the podcast. Here it is.
Right.
It arrived in 2025 in February at the moment of the podcast.
It's good to be present with you during this moment then.
It's very beautiful. I'm actually really grateful for this being the context, because it feels extremely safe. It changes everything. I'll open up about one chapter of it, because I think it's quite profound. So, among other things, one of the things that I lived through was it was basically malpractice. I was overprescribed vitamin B6, also known as peroxidine. And the overprescription of it started to bring on symptoms, muscle cramping, numbness, and photosensitivity. And those symptoms were getting worse over time. And there was no answers. There was no answers from my team. Like, I was working with a naturopath. He didn't have any answers. He was the one prescribing. He didn't have any answers. He didn't think it was abnormal. It looked like it might be symptoms that I already had for a different reason. The reason I found out it was B6 overprescription and toxicity was because of some blood work that was done when I changed health insurance providers, and they just did some routine blood work, and they were like, "Hey, Gabriel, your B6 levels are 6 times higher than they should be." And that explained it all pretty much. But during that period where it was getting worse and worse, my photosensitivity was really bad. So I could not be exposed to sunlight during that period. This is about a year and a half without withering, basically. And to cope with it, did things that you would normally associate with someone who has skin cancer. So I had a black parasol and wore tons of sun lotion, and dressed only in long sleeves, and basically only really went out and breathed easily at night. And in my own apartment, I kept the lights dim. I only had Edison bulbs. I treated all the windows with UV film. It was pretty intense. And incidentally, I was also hypersensitive to electromagnetic radiation during the same period. So I could walk into a room and I could tell you if there was strong Wi-Fi in the room. I could feel it in my hands. So I had that experience for a year and a half, and it got worse over that year and a half. So I became more and more cloistered and cut off from the world and isolated as a result of that. And then I found out about the B6, and I made some changes, stopped taking all the supplements, and got better, and was able to move to New York and have a completely different life after that. But that period was very dark and very isolating, and something that sometimes I don't even think about that I've gone through it. I just take it for granted, but it is highly unusual experience, very, very liminal kind of human experience. And if you go into the literature about medically induced UV sensitivity, it's a very narrow chapter in medical history. There's very few people who have had this experience and written about it, spoken about it, or really been public about it. And there's also been a fair amount of gaslighting of people who've had UV sensitivity. So yeah, I didn't expect to be talking about it, but fundamentally I was like a vampire for about a year and a half.
Wow. Yeah. I could see how you describe it that way. A lot of people refer to those moments as the dark night of the soul, which often comes right before a spiritual awakening or like a massive leap in expanded consciousness. Is that an experience that you had?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget once the detox started to work and I was able to go out in the sun again and just walk down the street. And it was really a huge relief. My God, what a huge relief to realize this wasn't some kind of additional dimension of a chronic condition that was just going to get worse. It was something I could fix. I mean, and I say the word fix, I don't mean heal from it. I mean literally cure it. So in my sort of healing journey, I just distinguish between healing and curing. I think we're always healing, like we're always figuring out ways to improve the quality of our health. And then sometimes we get cured from things, like there's literally a before and after, like a binary relationship between either having the condition or not having the condition. And in this case, it was a cure. To get off B6 and to detox from B6 was the cure for this UV sensitivity issue. I guess I should say, just to fully disclose it in case, on the rare occasion that someone finds this and finds it useful in the future, I should also mention that one of the things I was taking at the same time was concentrated glutathione, which is a antioxidant compound that happens to reduce melanin production. So it was a double whammy. It was not only increased UV sensitivity from B6 toxicity, it was also decreased melanin production from glutathione. And that was really brutal. And one of the things I should mention to help me heal from it was ginkgo, which increases melanin production. The gratitude I have for the life that I live now and the fact that I overcame that, that's been pretty fundamental. It's gotten me through a lot. I mean, I remember one of the tragedies upon tragedies that occurred during that period of my life was I had a bicycle accident, and I, as a result of the bicycle accident, had to get a catheter. And so there was this moment where I was standing in my apartment. I was living alone at the time, long distance from my partner at the time. And so I was alone. I had a catheter. I had UV sensitivity. I had my other chronic issues. I was miserable. And I'll never forget looking in the mirror and laughing out loud, and basically proclaiming to the universe, like, bring it on. Like, what else you got? You haven't got me down yet. You know, like, I could do this. And I just witnessed the tenacity of my own spirit, really, I think was what I have to say about it. It's like, it was easily the hardest thing I've been through. And I was able to find resolve in that. And I think, you know, one of the reasons that I feel confident talking about this is because I recognized in my own self-reflection years ago, when I realized at some point I would talk about this stuff publicly, it's like, you want to know who you're working with? You can look at my CV. You can see all the companies I've run and all the clients I've had and all, you know. But I'm somebody who laughed in the face of death. That's who you're really working with. And if that's not badass enough for you, if you don't have confidence enough in that, there's no way I can convince you that I'm capable, you know. But that's what I'm made of.
Oh, I want to argue. I wish there wasn't this screen between us. Yeah, right. We just willed it so. Yeah, exactly. That's how it works. I'm telling you. Not everyone knows that, but that's what happens. Oh man, I'm having a lot of feelings with what you just shared, so I kind of want to slow down for a second and like feel it. Yeah. No, I'm glad you bring up a topic that I care very much about, which is the idea of our own multidimensionality, right? You refer to, like, there's your resume, your CV, there's a certain way of looking at you, and that tends to be very linear and very focused in a work environment. But we know that when we do work, we're humans, you know, we can't like completely sever that or compartmentalize that. And that's why I wanted to exit the system so bad, is because I just saw myself and other people on my team feel like they were not allowed to show up as their full authentic selves. And I know that you have an aversion to the word authentic, but I kind of want to explore it with you.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the word authentic. So a couple weeks ago, I found myself like coming to terms with my position on authenticity. And my position on authenticity is that authenticity has been enshittified. Authenticity has been enshittified. Unfortunately, authenticity as a buzzword has been overly saturated for years now, not just recently. Like, I mean, it's been going on for years. The moment I heard a high-level ECD talk about authenticity at, Creative Week in New York City, run by the One Club, to a room full of aspiring creatives and agency people, I knew that authenticity was on its deathbed. But the writing's been on the wall for ages. Okay, so if authenticity has become enshittified, what does that mean for us being in this agency business? I think it's actually kind of exciting, because I think what it means is that entertainment is back. Entertainment is back. Entertainment doesn't have to be authentic. It has to be funny. It has to be engrossing. It has to be, oh my gosh, that's wild. Like, and that's fun. And you can have fun in your communications as a brand. My God. Okay, so yeah, stop trying to be so hard to be authentic. Some of the biggest success stories in recent memory of brands doing things that were notable in the public sphere in our industry were completely inauthentic. And I'm thinking especially of that darling of brands, Liquid Death, which is totally inauthentic and extremely funny and captivating. So I think entertainment that's my cheeky solution to authenticity being enshittified. Now, that's authenticity in the context of commercials, right? What you're talking about runs deeper than that. And I think the authenticity you're talking about is deeply tied to that confrontation with mortality most of the time. I think most people that show up in our world that feel like they are themselves and are really being who they are and expressing their truth have had some degree of encounter with their mortality, whether consciously or unconsciously, because it's one of the big archetypical motivators of that behavior is reckoning that time is precious. I don't have time to waste on, trifling bullshit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when I think of Liquid Death, and I agree, I fucking love that brand. And I love Andy Pearson, who's leading the brand. I love his work. And I agree that it's so out there. Like of course it's not authentic, but also to be able to be that ridiculous and get that kind of legal buy-in. I mean, look at the Super Bowl commercial that just happened last night. Like, to get the legal buy-in is a feat in and of itself.
I didn't see this. What did he do? I didn't see Super Bowl commercials yet.
Oh, it was just like all these traditional jobs where you would not, you should not drink on the job, like think flight, like a pilot or whatever. Like they're drinking, they're cracking open the can, but it's like it's just water,
right?
So
but it feels like a beer ad, but it's water.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Right.
Very nice.
And they're playing all of the time. Every spot they do is just like so out there.
Yeah, but it's advertising.
But also,
it's advertising. Yes, I'm sorry, but like this is where I would stick it to the industry. I was like, guys, we're making ads. Like,
yes,
why are we so serious about our ads? They're ads. Like,
yes, but I mean, I don't know him personally, so like I'm making a projection, I'm sure, but like. And to be able to be that entertaining or that like out there, like it requires a level of self-awareness. And right, like everything they do is so self-aware. And that's why it works. They're not I don't get the vibe that they're performative. Right? Like you can put on an outfit and be ridiculous and make a funny TikTok video, whatever. But like the people who are really like the people who are really taking off on TikTok are just being fucking weird because they're fucking weird and they're just like showing it and they don't fucking care what you think. And that energy is bringing people into like their inner circle, their fandom, whatever size scale they are, because there's a resonance of like that person's not afraid to be themselves. And so that brand is not afraid to be itself. And what is itself? It's very self-aware, more than most brands I've ever seen. And so I think the authenticity is there, but it's not like it doesn't feel gross, because what has happened is people who want to try to be authentic mimic and mirror the way that people were being authentic before, and then they try to imitate it and make it cookie cutter, and the vibe's gone. It's just like it's not real.
Well, you can't.
Anyway, that's what I would add. That's how I see it anyway.
I think that's spot on, and ultimately, like I'm thinking, you can't try to be authentic. Like if you try to be authentic, you fail. You're either authentic or you're not. And also the other word that's coming to mind is weirdness. Like embracing weirdness as a core value or as a brand position. It's very liberating. It allows you to do a lot of crazy stuff, and it's fundamentally inauthentic. And it's fundamentally authentic because if you're comfortable being weird, you can't have a pretense about yourself. Like those who are publicly weird and unashamed of their weirdness are fundamentally authentic, I think. So I don't know. But there was another dimension of it that I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember now.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. It'll come back if it wants to. Yeah, I think of like, so Jumpsuit, we do these road shows every year. So that's like an in-person event that we throw. And we invite about 50 people, and we go somewhere really cool. Like we were just in Marfa, Texas, so like the desert. We've been in the redwoods. And we allow the environment to kind of inspire the time together. And there's like a recurring cast of characters. And I was writing about this on LinkedIn the other day about brand lore. Like, right? Like, don't just create boring ass basic brand guidelines and they get pissed off because people don't know how to bring to life your tone of voice or whatever. It's like, it's so funny. Like, like brand lore is this authentic beingness as an organization or as a company. It's like, it's these like rituals that you create. It's these stories that you tell, like fundamental experiences that change people, and they keep talking about it, right? It can be your audience, it could be your team internally, it doesn't matter. And so I think of these road shows that we throw. Several years ago, I guess since the beginning, we started inviting Lala. And I don't think you've met her yet, but you will one day. She is trained as a performance actor, performance artist. And so she's used to showing up and doing a commercial, and she can play anything. But Lala has always been weird. Lala was weird when she was a kid. Her parents didn't know what to do with her. And she's probably, for most people, probably the weirdest person they'll ever meet. And so she would come to the road shows, and it kind of started with like us in Nashville first. And I was like, what do you want to embody when you're in Nashville? And it was Dolly Parton. She loves Dolly Parton. So she like did this performance of Dolly, and it was really funny and fun, but it was kind of superficial, like whatever. And we had a conversation afterwards, and she's like, when I attend the road shows, I don't know that I want to perform. I'm feeling like I want to embody. And back then I was like, okay, I think I know the distinction. I'm not sure. And so over time, like 2 years ago, she showed up in the redwoods as Sasquatch. You've probably seen some of those images. That's Lala. Yeah, I mean, and she did the whole thing herself. She looks like Sasquatch, and she like showed up onto the scene. The group's hanging out, and here comes Sasquatch emerging from the woods, coming up slowly to the humans, not really sure like how to engage. And I'm just like standing back, and I'm watching the group dynamic, and this is where multidimensionality comes into play. I see some people just like laughing. It was funny, right? So it's like, oh, haha, that's Lala, dressed in a costume. And then there's other people who know Lala, and they're like, oh no, she's like actually Sasquatch. Like she's being Sasquatch. And so, yeah, anyway, she goes about the day. We film it all. And then I talked to her afterwards, and I was like, what was that like for you? And she's weeping, and she's just like, I've felt like a multidimensional being, like not human, like other kind, for a long time. And this was kind of my first opportunity to embody that. And I'm aware that even now as I'm talking about this, like there are going to be people listening who's like, what are you talking about? And this is like the level of consciousness that like Lala exists in, or the conversation in like the public sphere right now is like people are still scratching their heads like, what do you mean you're not male or female? Right? What does it mean? What does it mean to be like gender fluid or non-binary? I don't get it. Okay, so we're talking up here. Here's a human who feels other kind, who doesn't feel human, who, I just like want to cry talking about it. Coming to a place called Jumpsuit in this experience that we create, inviting this person to fully show up authentically themselves. And again, without putting it on anyone, like people can perceive it however they want. But when you really know what's happening, it becomes, it moves from beyond being like an artist or like art, like a performance art, to like, I am the art.
Yeah. Well, and I think,
right?
I think that's, I want to say that's, I wrote a missive the other day, on LinkedIn. I wrote a post about, it was clickbait for sure. I'm trying things out right now on LinkedIn to see what hits, right? So I just think it was very clickbaity. It was like confessions of an agency owner, video artist turned agency owner. And I was basically, pretty unabashedly throwing most creative professionals under the bus for the objectification of culture. Because I was basically saying a lot of the people working in our industry want to be artists, but have never really been artists, or want to be filmmakers, but have never really been filmmakers or scriptwriters or novelists. And so they make advertising. And there's nothing wrong with that. The sin is thinking that the advertising is the other thing, thinking the advertising is a film, thinking the advertising is art when it's not, and acting like it's art or film when it's not. That's the sin. That's the problem. I don't really believe in sin, but that's the problem. So in pointing out that problem, the subtext of what I was saying is that it's fundamentally different to be an artist than it is to be a creative, right? And I think the big difference is embodiment, because you don't stop being an artist. I wake up in the morning, I'm an artist. I go to sleep, I'm still an artist. Even if I haven't had a studio practice in a decade, I'm still an artist. I had a solo show in a museum, I'm an artist. You know, and even if I hadn't had a museum show, I've been drawing in sketchbooks since I was tiny. I'm an artist. Like, there's things about who I am fundamentally make me an artist. I don't ever stop being an artist. It's not a performance. It's part of my identity. It's part of my existence. It's part of this embodiment in this lifetime. Gabriel's, among other things, an artist. And so, and the other thing I wanted to relate to you, though, it's about magic. So I think that the thing that is a reasonable claim to make when you're working in advertising is that you're a magician. I think that's true. I don't think you're an artist per se. You might be. You might have like an art practice and be an artist. But I think if you're working in advertising, you're working in media, you're working in entertainment, you're working in the mediation of sounds and images over great distances to change people's behavior at a distance. Maybe you could call that telekinesis or astral projection or any number of other things. You're fundamentally a magician. If you would describe the state of the modern advertising economy and the things that it achieves for brands and for the creative people that make the advertising, and you would describe it to Merlin, he would say, hey, you're one of me. Like, welcome to the inner circle of people that can create illusions and persuade people using the dark arts of illusion making. Not necessarily dark all the time. But, you know, I think that there's some credence in that claim. And I think that's also why circling back to the word invocation is interesting when we talk about AI as a way of describing what it is we're doing when we're prompting. Because if you think of it as like this poetic gesture to the collective unconscious that's been scraped by these ethically dubious CEOs and companies into this morass of training data that you're then addressing as this multidimensional vector database with exactly the right words to pull down out of that cloud of adjacent linguistic data some kind of meaningful pattern. What could possibly be closer to invocation than that in terms of human invention to date? Like, it's the closest we've come. If you take this kind of alchemical, almost medieval understanding of what Western magic is supposed to be, there we are, And I think, arguably, the elders of various different indigenous traditions notwithstanding, who would probably say, yeah, but it's always been there. We've always been doing it. You're just disconnected from the source. And they're right. They're absolutely right. But I think what it means for us Western practitioners of these arts in this commercial space is that what we're really offering, in the best case, when we're doing our best work for our clients, is we're offering a certain type of sorcery fundamentally. And that they're coming to us knowing that we have access to something that is for them opaque. And that sorcery or that magic, it's communal, and it's a resonant frequency. The mediation of images of a person embodying Sasquatch creates a certain type of value and a certain type of aesthetic that ripples outwards in space-time and manifests other eventualities. Put in plain corporate language, someone could see documentation of this Sasquatch performance and think, oh man, we're having a company offsite next month in Poland. Can we book Sasquatch for that? I think it'd be really cool as like a intervention team building exercise. What do you think? Can you ask Margot in accounts if we have budget for that? Like, that is what it is at the end of the day, as mundane as that fucking is, but that is where it goes eventually if it's successful, is that the mediation of these practices and these kind of modalities become part of this larger societal conversation. And it's us as practitioners of media and language and the arts and image making and writing and language, invoking these things into existence that creates that. And that's also why we have to never stop doing content marketing. because fundamentally the content marketing is the way, right? It is the way. And it's one of the interesting things that I couldn't say during my year working at Meta. It was off the table. I couldn't talk about organic. I could only talk about paid. I couldn't talk about organic media because I wasn't going to be moving the numbers for Meta if I talked about organic. I would only be talking about paid advertising because of paid media spend. Fair. That's fair. I was working for them. That's what they wanted. But in the broader picture of things, neglecting what we call organic, neglecting just producing information and media and storytelling is, well, it's definitely brand suicide, but it's probably also cutting off most creative people as well. I mean, even as much as my podcast Be Brave is in service of the agency and has got a relatively narrow remit to talk about agency sort of stuff, it's a huge personal outlet for me. I can't deny that. It's a huge release valve on all of that multidimensional activity to be able to say, hey, there's a place you could put some of this and channel some of this that actually has a use to other people, is useful to other people, is entertaining to other people, is chin scratching.
That was so good. I completely agree with everything you said, and I'm glad it's been said, because I don't know that I've come across anyone who's communicated it just like that. And so, well done. I know that's not a new thought. Like, that is something that you've been feeling very deeply for a very long time. And so thank you on behalf of so many artists and intuitive people to have that seen and articulated so well. I completely feel you on the alchemic nature of what we do. I think I've explored many times the idea of being a creative. What does that mean? What does that label mean? What do people expect when they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You're the creative. What is that? And I get it. But I fundamentally, if I can help people see anything, And not just creative people, even the boring people writing the boring briefs, hoping that we'll be able to perform magic and make something happen, is that we're actually all creators. And I think a lot of people don't see themselves as creative, let alone a creator. But we've been alluding to it throughout this entire conversation of like, oh, we just put it out there, so therefore it shall be. Like to me, it really is that simple. And whether you're creating a content piece or a company or a new version of your life, it's like that power in the ether is there for you to tap into. And I'm not like, I have an aversion to like super new age, super woo woo things. And I know that some people would be like, no, wait, you're the woo woo person in my life. But I think the difference is like that embodiment part that you spoke of, like being able to, this is where like, if we were to tap into the moment in time Jumpsuit is existing in, this morning on LinkedIn, I put out, I don't know if you saw it, but I put out a list of modalities that Jumpsuit is now offering, which includes things like energy work and shamanism and, intuitive services. And the way that we've gotten there, for anyone who's curious, and I'll keep it quick, is that these roadshows became the first moment where I started integrating this independent network of freelancers and founders with this other independent network of people that I just described, right? They're also solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and freelancers in and of their own right. They just historically haven't had a role in traditional business. And these roadshows were an opportunity for me to really kind of create a container to serve the people like me and you who work our asses off and we're tired and we just need to like go retreat somewhere cool with cool people and like get filled up and get inspired creatively and be taken care of in our bodies and stuff like that. And so I started pulling in people who did Reiki or whatever. And everyone loved it. And I started noticing this group of people over here being like, oh, I wish I worked for Jumpsuit. And I'm like, well, you kind of do, because I just paid you. And it's an independent network, and that's how it happens. I just don't know how to, like, get you in front of a client, per se, although maybe clients would be interested in retreats or whatever. Leadership retreats, I don't know. And so we've been doing that for the past several years. And recently we had a client reach out, and I'm going to be a little elusive to the details of it, because it's a sensitive topic. But we had someone reach out to Jumpsuit and say, hey, like, there's this traumatic event that occurred. Our company will never be the same. I'll say it's like a life or death scenario. It's very impactful. And we don't really know what to do. And something told us Jumpsuit. And so we get on a call and we're learning more about the situation, and we can identify some very practical things that the agency can do. We can give you a producer and a creative director and build this team like an amoeba to come around you to stabilize the situation. And we're so good at that. We're experts at that. Let us help you. And so that was what we were exploring at first. And then I did a psychedelic journey last weekend, and I saw this scene play out where Jumpsuit 2.0, like these people over here, actually showed up too. And we created a container for these people to really help them process what was happening in their nervous system, energetically, spiritually. And I saw the whole thing. It was I experienced it, and I the next day I'm integrating that, and my brain starts going crazy. It's like trying to figure it out. So it's like, wait, was that like I'm supposed to do this, or was it just like a thing I saw? And then I'm like, okay, if I'm supposed to do this, like, how do I even bring that up to a client? Like, I don't even know what they believe. And so it starts strategizing. Okay, I do it this way, A, B, C, and I just pull over my car. I was driving. Pull over my car. And I'm like, my brain is not the thing to make the decision. Like, it's giving me anxiety in my body. And so I like visit this intelligence center. I'm pointing to my heart. And so I'm just feeling into that, which is not historically how I made decisions. I'm neurodivergent. My brain's really fast. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I just start weeping. I'm experiencing so much empathy for the situation they're in. And I'm like, my discernment told me like, it's time to like reach out and communicate from this state. So I send an audio message and I'm like, hey, this may be weird, but all I know what to do right now is to show up authentically and to tell you what is happening. And this is what happened this weekend. And this is what's happening right now. And it is totally okay for us to do business as usual. Everything we've been discussing, we can do for you. But I would not be authentic if I didn't tell you how Jumpsuit could really help. And so I send that off, and then I'm like, what the fuck did I just do? I have no idea. A little bit of fear came in or whatever. But 45 minutes later, I get a text, and my contact is just like, I haven't been able to stop crying since I got that. I am so open. This is exactly what we need. I wouldn't have known how to ask for it. And this Friday, we've got a team flying there. And
It's amazing. It's like it's what a lot of people call heart leadership. It's the other thing that comes to mind is, so two things. So one is I really believe in this value pricing conversation that's happening in our business around talking to clients about their goals, their KPIs, and trying to measure success and get buy-in to potentially much bigger projects or ways of working together than what they might think they need. And it's a practice I try to use in clients that will engage me that way, is to talk about the big picture first. Of course, just as you said, business as usual is always an option. If we're not going to hit the big, hairy goal from day one together, we want to do the business as usual incremental growth. Let's do incremental growth. I'm here for whatever. But one of the interesting things that I'm picking up at what you're talking about is thinking about the underlying factors that contribute to resisting big things and big movements and big ideas, really, and addressing them in a holistic way from an agency perspective. Because fundamentally, like, why will some CEO decide they're not ready for the epic six-figure package that is a go-to-market strategy and an amazing organic and paid integrated brand campaign with a totally entertaining content concept that will make them the liquid death of their vertical? Why won't they do that? Steer. Is anything we're offering as an agency addressing the root cause of their fear?
No. And the way that the things that they know how to ask for to try to address that, if they even ask at all, are like case studies. Show me when you've done this exactly the way I'm asking you within the exact same vertical, exactly to make me feel better.
That's just externalizing their fear, right? It's just saying, okay, I'm afraid you, creative person who's spent their whole life being creative and actually knows what they're talking about. But anyway, you show me you can prove you've done this before, you have a track record, I will feel less afraid. And of course, this is an industry standard. Case studies are necessary. We could survive without case studies. Let's not get the baby thrown out with the bathwater. But I think what we're uncovering in this delicious moment together is that if we could somehow, as agency owners, approach these sorts of clients with an offering that simply addresses their fear, never mind whether we're going to work together beyond that, even maybe. But because it shouldn't be seen as some kind of crass attempt to sell them things. It should be more about, okay, like maybe it's a value add with the low end of the offering. Maybe it's like, hey, we're going to do business as usual. By the way, I thought you might want to work you might want to check out this workshop or this lecture or this. Maybe it's maybe the best way to sell this stuff is as an online class that they can opt into that has a discrete subscription cost or whatever. But like fundamentally, if there's a way to give them access to that higher frequency, that's being of real service to the people in that company. Never mind the company, because I know that we've both been entrepreneurs. I was the CEO of a design company, and we had a product that was taken off. We had a good conversion rate. We were doing no advertising, and we had something like a 5% conversion rate. We're selling about 1 unit per day. We had customers in 50 countries, and I'm good at making things complex. So I had like a go-to-market strategy that had probably 4 or 5 different channel options. We could go retail, we could go direct to consumer, we could do the as seen on TV gimmick and see if we could do a flash sale. We had like these different ways into moving into the market, and I was paralyzed. I had significant decision paralysis, and in the end, I shut that company down. But if I look back at my younger self and I had been able to be wise enough to see, like, how would that situation really have been solved? Would it have been all the, coaching and consulting that I was scrambling to get to try to orient me in the right direction? Would it have been bringing on like a more senior partner who was a CMO who had done this before? Or would it have simply had been some kind of modality that would have given me the confidence to act without knowing the outcome, without having shored up every possible risk, and just take decisive action on one of those go-to-market strategies and making sure it was the best it could be? What would have been enough? That would have been enough, because hey, guess what? There's no right answers in this business. If I had gone retail and I'd really put all my eggs in that basket and done it the right way and did the math correctly, that probably would have been a success. If I decided I'm going to be a direct-to-consumer web shop, and that was going to be the whole story, I probably could have made that a success. But it wasn't. There wasn't a right answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 2 words coming up for me are intuition and equanimity. Right? Like, and trust me, I love data. I believe in using data to make informed decisions, and that can really help calm a lot of the fears. Excuse me. However, a lot of times, especially when you're on the edge and you're doing something you've never done before, and by the way, that's where Jumpsuit likes to exist. So yeah, like we have case studies for branding and websites or whatever. What I'm interested in is exploring uncharted territories with people like me and you, who we may not have a case study to show you, but we have a lifetime of doing this exact thing over and over and over again. We have battle wounds, and we have strong intuition and deep, profound creativity and wide networks to be able to have higher success rates than the average person.
Sure.
And so
King Arthur didn't ask Merlin if he had a case study about levitation and, who led into gold, But also, to your point, like Brave New Agency, same ethos. Like, I have case studies of work I've done in the past. I have client names I can drop that I have consulted. And at the same time, I have knowledge about the market, where things are headed in the next couple of years, for which there are no case studies because we're talking about the future. And whether it's, designing personas for AI agents, or whether it's pioneering methods of hybrid production, or, thinking about, I don't know, how we can tell stories of a better future. Like, these are all domains where it's necessary to use other criteria than track record and metrics to make a decision. Because if you look at those things, you won't be able to take action. You'll be stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to help people open up and be able to trust their intuition more than they've allowed, to be able to actually feel resonance, right? Like, I'm not going to resonate with everyone. That's okay. I actually don't want to. That's why I don't run paid ads. I'm not trying to just like fill our pipeline with a bunch of clients that need agency services. I am looking for people who really resonate with what I'm saying and the work that we do. Or the work, more accurately, the work that we aspire to do, right? And so there's like, who better to help you unleash your trust in your intuition than a creative agency powered by all these like people who've spent their whole lives like in energy work. And then the other word that I wanted to go back to is equanimity, right? Like, I think what happens when something does fail, we take a risk and it doesn't work out, right? A lot of people's nervous systems just go from like 0 to 100, and they get pissed and they start pointing the finger, and like it's like a cultural shit show. And sometimes, yeah, and like sometimes you need to like fire your agency, whatever, right? Like that's real, that's true, but like to help people get to the point where maybe we relinquish some control, and actually the power comes from our own ability to meet anything.
Well, and the bravest thing we can do, and the thing that I would love to have a client work with me on, where I felt like I was ready to make the investment. Because the caveat is, a lot of the time when you're having a pricing conversation around value with a client, a prospective client, the fundamental question you're asking the client as the agency is, what sort of investment are you ready to make? Right? That's basically the type of question you're asking. But I want to be in conversations where they're asking me that question. Because fundamentally, as a partner, that's the most impact I can possibly have. And if somebody is willing to give me a piece of the pie, this is why a piece of the pie or sharing the pie is one of the core values of Brave New Agency. If I think their opportunity is really worth the effort, I might throw down harder than you've ever seen any creative agency throw down, because I stand to profit from the upside. And that downstream profitability for agencies is I think, the jack move in this business. Because, look, it's one thing to sit there across the table as the skeptical client and ask for case studies and data to prove yourself, to get the job. But it's quite another thing if your agency partner is a true partner and says, you don't have to pay me my full rate. Some portion of my rate is performance pay tied to success. We will make this a success together because I have skin in the game. And I would just challenge clients to make it worth my personal brand being associated with yours. That's what I would throw that gauntlet down. Because look, there are some clients for whom that is not an offer that I'm willing to give them. They're not in an industry, they're not selling a product, they're not doing a service in the world that I'm comfortable putting my equity into. I'd be happy to be their service provider, and it's no judgment of them. But just like they have to navigate their brand and who they associate with, so do I. But if there is a client out there who thinks, hey, we got something juicy, I'll tell you one that I would find really interesting. I don't know if you ever heard this. Recently, I forget his name. I think his name's Chris. The guy who founded the TED Talks has been doing it for over 20 years, and he's stepping down. And there's an open call for who's going to pick up the baton. And I felt, wow, that is brave. That is cool. Whoever came up with that, hats off to you. Good strategy there, because it's like walking the talk. And I just think that's what we need more of. We need more companies who can play in that game. Another reason I believe that is when I was in the startup incubator in 2012, and I realized, hey, I'm running a lifestyle business. No one wants to invest in a lifestyle business. They can't scale at 10x and get their ROI. I started to think about investment too, because I was like, well, shit, what kind of investments am I going to make as a relatively cash poor member of this ecosystem? And I can invest my time. I can be very, very choosy about investing my time. And one of my potential clients right now is who I may end up doing that with. We'll see if it plays out. He's actually created a pretty sophisticated deal because he believes this too. And he's created a deal where early participants in the brand building exercise of his product get to participate in an options pool. So that eventually, if they have a liquidity event at some point and sell the brand, all of those people who are working for options can exercise their options for a nominal fee of like a couple pence or whatever, and then cash in on the acquisition as stakeholders or shareholders, whatever. I think it's really brilliant. More companies should be going through the hassle of setting up that way. And it's unfortunate. I think there are legal and financial barriers to entry to getting that. And that is actually a conversation we should have offline. That particular dilemma of it being difficult to create that type of share-to-pie shareholdership in the creative industries is a problem. And I think if it were solved, it could unlock an era of amazing brand collaborations, branded content, and also just more quality, just more quality across the industry, across the board.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. I would love to have that conversation, and I'm thinking of like 5 other ones that I'd love to have with you too. So I'm just like proclaiming that you will be a recurring guest, and I'll join your podcast. You join mine.
Oh, I can't wait! I can't wait to have you on Be Brave. I had my 3rd episode published today. My first human guest. His name is Thomas Florence, and he's a very, very humble lad from Liverpool who does very groundbreaking work in augmented reality games. And we explored the connection between augmented reality games and this emerging field of personas and agents. And we actually, in the process of doing the pre-interview, I came up with this phrase, NPC in your ARG, and it sounded really catchy. And so I ended up like asking Suno to make me a 90s hip-hop style anthem where they sing, you put the NPC in your ARG, and that's the theme music to this episode of the podcast. And it is ridiculous. And we're going to escalate it. So yes, I have asked him to look into it. We're probably going to make, if we can find a good quote, we're probably going to make baseball caps that say NPC ARG.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so entrepreneurial. Now you already have a shop, you know? It's like, you can stop this guy. I love it. Well, thank you so much for giving me 2 hours.
Yeah, this was a deep dive. Yeah,
I honestly don't know what to call this episode because I was like, yeah, it's going to primarily be AI, but it wasn't. So I'll have to feel into that. But I love exactly all the areas that we explored. It was perfect.
Laughing in the face of death.
Yeah, exactly. And on that topic, I was like, oh yeah, definitely there's something about the audacity when you realize that you're still alive. Yes. And also psychedelics will allow someone to experience death over, and not physical death, ego death. Over and over and over again, which I believe also kind of gives the same kind of benefits.
I think it's close. I'm going to make the case for actual death being even more significant.
For sure.
But ego death is certainly a version of death, and you definitely, when you're talking to someone who has never had a psychedelic experience, there's usually a difference between someone who has. So yeah. So I would agree with that, but I think that the actual confrontation of real bodily death is something very, very unique and precious.
Yeah.
And you know, I can highly recommend it, and also don't go instigate it. My God, yeah. No. Totally. But I can highly recommend surviving it.